Okay, my name is John Rogers. I'm with the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and we'd like to welcome you to our quarterly collaborative meeting. We appreciate the support we get here from the community, from our operators, and those all interested in the economy of the Uinta Basin. I want to give a special thanks to Duchesne County that provides this wonderful facility, and they've been very supportive over the years, and we appreciate their support. I have two attendance lists here I'd like to pass out. First of all, if you are here, could you mark that you're here so we can keep our mailing list updated? And if you see people that have moved on or no longer involved in this, please cross them out. And if you're new to our meeting, please sign in the back and we'll add you to our mailing list. So I'll start that over here. Pass that one in. Just to get started, I want to give a brief picture, a shot in time of where we are at in the industry currently. It's always interesting to see how things change over time. So I got a little data here, some information that, where are we going here? There we go. This is just some statistics, which you might find very boring, but I think it's important to look at this. First of all, this is a point in time going back in July after the last 6 years. We have 13 rigs going right now. You look back at 2020, what was going on there? 0 rigs. So look how we rebounded. Even before COVID, we were at 6. I know at one time in the basin there was 40 plus, but that's a different world. We had vertical rigs, now we have horizontal rigs. So that's something, we can see that trend. So that's a very positive trend we're seeing here. APDs. You can look here, historically, we were kicking around the 300, 200 range. And right now, for 2023, we are at 503. And so if you annualize that for the rest of the year, we're going to have 952. We've almost tripled our APDs going forward. So that's a lot of stress on the division. That's a lot of work, but that's what we're here to do, get those APDs out there. Because the APDs then point to the next thing, spuds. You can look at spuds. We were right around the 200, 300 range, and if you annualize the 172, which we have right now, we are going to be at 323 for the year. So we can see things are trending in a positive direction. So that's just some data we want to get out there. If you put back your COVID hats on when we were back there, I thought it was the end of the world. So where we're at now in that short time frame, realistically, we've come a long way. So this area has really rebounded. Next. Hopefully next. Okay, this is just a production graph I keep over time. And obviously you can see the COVID lows there. We climbed out of it, and then look at the boom we had. We were well over 4 million barrels of oil a month. And so we bounced down a little bit. I was concerned about that, but now we've bounced up again. So I'm not sure where this trend is going, but generally it's an upward trend. So we can see that data is as of April of this year. We're about 2 months behind in that. So you can see oil production is increasing, and I think as things come online with the rail, what happens out here, we're seeing a lot more horizontal drilling. I feel that trend is going to continue up. And we do a monthly forecast, and these are the numbers I use for that. On the gas side of things, you can see we had a steady decline in gas, and then we bounced back up, and now we're kicking right around that 20 million MCF a month. And it's fairly erratic, but it's still up there where it's supporting the industry. So that's a snapshot of where the industry is as of today. And so it's something we do, and I think it's interesting to see, keep the track of that. So that's all I'm going to have to say. Or if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to entertain those at this point. Yes, John?
If you go back one slide to the oil production.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Granted, there were no rigs. There were no rigs in operating in 2020, but if you just go from the low, that trend could actually be steeper depending on how far back you want to go. So I think, again, we don't really know where it's going, but depending on if you want to look as far back as you're looking, or you just want to look at 2020, the incline of production could be very different.
Yeah. As I do these monthly forecasts, it's more black magic than science, but I try to do my best and give us an idea. And we tried to forecast what our cash flow will be, because the division is supported by a conservation fee based on production and pricing, and it's also based on severance tax. And so that's why this is very important to us. And we had a very good year as far as numbers coming into the division. So thanks for that insight, John. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we're having a slight change in our program, because we're going to have Yankton Johnson from Moon Lake give us his presentation. He's normally scheduled, where were you, at third, but he's willing to go to be the leadoff hitter here, and then we'll work with that as we see our other presenters arrive, hopefully. If not, we may have a short day. So I'll give you time over to Yankton. Let me get your, take that.
Say John.
Oh.
While you're penciling that up, can I go ahead and give a shout out?
Sure. Grab one of those.
Appreciate John giving me just a couple of seconds here. We appreciate everybody that just sets stuff out. We love that. It's updates on our businesses and things. But if you'll find this little one that's folded like this, the state right now, Envision Utah, is doing another survey. And fortunately or unfortunately, those carry a lot of weight in state planning. And generally, the rural areas are absolutely not well represented in those. And so if you will take just a moment, we want everyone to reply, but if you have a business here in the basin, and especially if you're seeing things from a pro-energy standpoint, just critical that we get our input out there. We have amazing legislators. I see Christine Watkins here and Senator Winterton that are advocates for us all the time. But these studies a lot of times end up in cement somewhere, and people refer to them, and when we don't have a good representation for our area, it really hurts us, and then we have to fight that narrative for the next 5 years till the next study. So again, if you'll please go take that survey, encourage your employees to, encourage your friends to, your family members. It's really important that rural Utah be represented. And I want to get a shout out, AOG members, would you please raise your hand? All of our AOG staff. They have been working on the SEDS, which is an economic development survey that they put out that has to be done every 5 years. They have done an excellent job. They're doing a website that will be available. It'll carry the most current information. They're the ones that hosted the original group that came out and met with elected officials. They will be here for this meeting. If you need more information, you need some guidance, you want the link sent to you personally, visit with one of our great AOG staff that are here today. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. And it's an honor for me to be in a group that has a room full of wealth and knowledge. I just hope that you folks understand that we realize the critical impacts that you have in our industry and in the basin in general. I just really appreciate what you do and who you are, and I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to be able to start off on a positive note, actually 2 positive notes. It's always great to follow Irene, because I know it's going to be a positive note, and then there's going to be me, and I'm going to shed some reality on what's happening in the industry world as we know it, with capacity constraints, not just in our service territory, but on a national scale. I always like to start off with, I hope you can bear with me. I'll try to talk really loud because I'm not wired to just stand behind a podium, but I'll do my best. I always like to start off by giving a shout out to our employees. Off to the right is the picture of our employees electrifying the new Roosevelt City flag. Kudos to Roosevelt City. And yes, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Thanks. We can hand that around as there's questions. Okay. They told me to stay close to the video. That makes me even more nervous. But, so the photo off to the right is our, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me okay? The photo off to the right is our guys electrifying the new Roosevelt City flag, and the photo off to the left here was last year about this time. If you remember, we had two major outages. One was a planned outage, one was not a planned outage. One was in the Fort Duchesne area, which took out most of the west end of Roosevelt in the Roosevelt area. And this is what we call our cove switch. We had to actually, ironically, these switches have been in operation and functioning for 20 plus years. And all of a sudden they both went out at the same time when it was the least convenient for all of us, primarily because it was in the heat of the summer months. And also, it was right after COVID, and we had all kinds of supply chain constraints and different things, and we couldn't get these switches in, and we didn't have any on the shelf. And so we had to do some major switching and changing and work with our wholesale power provider in Deseret to get the power up and going. So those are just a couple photos there that we had. This is somewhat redundant. I think probably everyone in the room has witnessed this slide, but I'll do it again just to let you know where our service territory is. Again, we start at the top of Daniel Summit, and we go all the way over to western Colorado in Rangeley, Colorado, with exception to the question everyone always asks, why not Vernal, Mazer, Naples? That predates me, and it's just the facts of life, and so I'll leave it at that. But we have 41 substations in our service territory. We have just over 4,000 miles of line. We have 346 miles of transmission that our service territory covers and watches over and makes sure that we keep electrified. Now the bad news. I just bear with me as I go through this. This is really frustrating for us. It's super frustrating for you folks as well. Some of this will probably come across as alarming or concerning. It is for us at this point. As most of you are aware, I was on the radio talking about some of this in depth for about 30 minutes the other day. Moon Lake also has put what we refer to as a declaration of impending energy crisis out right now with the way that the country's moving and some of the moves that they're making as it pertains to our electricity. And so I want to dive a little bit deeper so maybe everyone has a pretty good understanding of where I'm coming from and why we are concerned. So if you look on a global scale, now this isn't national, this is global, this is where we get our electricity. 36% currently from coal, 23% from natural gas. You combine the two, you've nearly got 60% of where our power comes from. You feather in some hydro, which is that number's starting to be reduced with hopes that they're going to reduce the natural gas and coal. Not my hope, but that's a national hope as well. And their creative minds that I believe is somewhat into a fairy tale is saying that the wind and solar at 10% is somehow going to replace the three bottom lines, and it's going to happen in the next 10 to 12 years. I'm going to show you some slides to back up that I think that's not something that I'm saying I'm against. It's not. I hope no one leaves this room and thinks he's anti-renewable. That's not me. That's not who I am. That's not who we are. But we're realists, and I think it's time that we start looking at the numbers and we start being real about what we can do in the next 10 to 12 years. I think it's important that we continue to feather these other sources of power to our grid, but it's unrealistic to think that we can take 10% and replace it with nearly 70% of what our current sources are to electrify the grid. Another challenge that we are facing on a regular basis, I can just throw these out, it just never ends. The EPA is doing everything they can to make all of our lives miserable. And these are things that they are doing. Some of these are good, some are not so good, some are really good, some are really bad. But if you look at 9 regulatory items that they have recently enforced on natural gas and coal-fired plants and in terms of energy, these are things they continue to layer on. Now, they release billions of dollars for renewables, right? But they don't subsidize any of these things. Our current load that we use in our service territory is 150 megawatts. 460 megawatts is produced at the Deseret Bonanza plant. 460 total megawatts. Our service territory uses 150 of that. They are now telling us that we have to on number one, the ozone transport rule, that we have to put a selective catalytic converter basically on our one smokestack to the tune of about 150 million bucks. So where does the cost come from? I mean, eventually we have to pass that on to you folks. That's the real frustration that we have, is billions of dollars are injected into renewables. As you've seen on a global scale, it's 10%. That's electrifying the world. They layer this stuff on us with millions of dollars and no resources to help fund it. So the only thing we can do is pass that on. And we have to pass that on to our oil producers. We have to pass that on to our residential load. We have to pass that on to our commercial load, our industrial load. All of those loads eventually has to come up with that money. That's a concern for us. We can't continue to have reliable, affordable power if they're going to layer this stuff on top of us. Now, am I saying this stuff isn't good? No. The question was asked on the radio, is our coal cleaner than other countries' coal? Well, that's not a 2-minute discussion. That's a very in-depth discussion. But the way I answered that was, in general, yes, because of some of this stuff. You know, they're forcing us to function and operate cleaner, which is a better environment for all of us. And so some of it's good, but we have to somehow have a happy medium, and we also have to sit back and think about the numbers and where we're going to come up with the money. None of it's subsidized. That's the real frustration I have with solar, renewable energy, is all the subsidies. If it's the way we're going to move in the future, my opinion is, then let it stand alone. The rest of it has to. So that's where we get really frustrated, but I'll get off my soapbox on that because I feel like this is where we're at. Have you heard the term stinking thinking? I mean, when I was a kid, my dad used to always say, pull your head out of your... Well, now I have to think we need to tell each other to pull our head out of others. You know, and this is where we're at. We need to wake up. I think it's time that we go back to Albert Einstein. And what's he say? We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And it's time to be realist. I mean, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong. I want to dive into statistics, into numbers. What backs up what makes sense? And if we don't, I think we're going to be in this picture here. And none of us want to be there. So sorry if that offends anyone, but that's kind of where we're at. Let me just give you a clip that Senator Lee presented. This is him presenting to the Senate committee here just this year.
It's become very popular to talk about the negative impacts of using coal and natural gas. It really should have a conversation about these.
One second. I'm not sure how to fix that.
That's okay, we'll figure it out.
I'm going to go back a slide because that's one of my favorite.
I was just going to say, that's our favorite.
You're going to have to make an adjustment here real quick.
Technical difficulties, sorry. If there's a way that I can usually complicate things, I've figured that out.
Somebody's got to have that role.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of us are better than others at it.
We've got you.
One thing I have learned to be confident with is IT folks.
All right, so Al, do you want to unmute the podium? Okay, give it a try.
Boy, I never would have imagined I could show that 5 times in one presentation. Maybe it was intended to happen. Are we ready?
Ready.
You know, it's become very popular to talk about the negative impacts of using coal and natural gas, but we really should have a conversation about the extent to which we rely on them and about the positive impacts of using them. The fact that the American people benefit from them in ways that can't simply be overlooked and dismissed. The reality is that human beings are able to survive and thrive much more readily, much more comfortably, much more affordably because of affordable and plentiful and reliable power, primarily coming from natural gas and from coal. And so the advantage that fossil fuel electric power generation provides isn't something that we can just ignore. It's something that makes it not only affordable, but also available on demand as base load power on a consistent basis. We all benefit from that, from being able to walk into a room and turn on the light switch and know that the lights are going to come on and it'll be affordable and reliable.
So think about what he said there, base load power, dispatchable power. Those are resources that allow us in our service territory, thank you, sir, to flip the switch, the power's there. We reduce that to intermittent power, which is what solar and wind provides us at this point in time. I'm not going to say that's not going to be better in the future, but at this point in time, it provides power at a capacity factor of 20% roughly on solar and 30% roughly on wind. So you combine the two, you average it out, let's say 24%. 24% of the time you flip the switch, the power is going to be there. If we completely tomorrow flip the switch and say natural gas and coal-fired plants are off the market. Think about what that does to us. Now, we're Americans. I mentioned this on the radio. We're Americans. We're all about free enterprise. We have advanced to a point that we have very little patience for a Wi-Fi that runs slow or a stoplight that we have to wait longer for. And they're trying to tell us now that we're going to be comfortable with charging our future vehicles for a minimum of 45 minutes to an hour. And by the way, good luck with trying to find them and where they're at. Those are real concerns and real issues, and I think he hits the nail on the head. So how do we match up currently with China and Russia? Well, China and Russia's viewpoint is we need energy and we need technologies, and the combined two is going to give us national power. Well, who has national power right now or has had in the past? The United States of America. What are we saying? Oh, we'll use it for marketing. We'll use it for some kind of a commodity. Let's worry about climate issues. See where we're going with this, folks? It's alarming. It's concerning that we are taking a backdoor approach to how we're going to attack this, and it's super concerning for us. So let's break it down in terms of China. I really hate to spend the bulk of my presentation on them, but it seems to me that they have got a little better picture on this than we currently do. So much of the coal growth is happening in China, which accounts for more than half of the global coal consumption. Now think about that in terms of pollution too. I mean, a lot of that is going to float our way. So if China has 4,500 coal-fired plants and they have permitted 2, in the last year they have permitted 2 for every month to go online in the next year, increasing their grid by 100 gigawatts. And the United States of America has 525 coal-fired plants, and we're saying we're going to take them off in 10 to 15 plants per year in the next several years. See where the trajectory's going? This isn't comfortable. This isn't a joke anymore. We have to start thinking about what this is doing to us. So China has jumped by 6.6%. In February of 2022, the Global Energy Monitor reported that China permitted about 2, which is what I just talked about. And then that's 106 gigawatts of new coal capacity. But it's not just China that's thinking about this. Look at all the countries. Look what they're doing. Argentina, the Philippines, South Africa, South Korea. Most of these on this list, folks, are third world countries that are now advancing in life to the point where they don't have brownouts and blackouts. And we're skidding the other direction. That's our concern. There was 9 states in 2022, Christmas Eve, that experienced rolling blackouts because of capacity issues. This isn't weather related, this is capacity issues. That's a concern on a national scale. You know, we have NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corp. They're concerned about this. FERC is concerned about this. 2/3 of the U.S. could face energy shortfalls. This is hot off the press. This isn't just saying Roosevelt. This isn't just saying some town in the Midwest. This is saying that 2/3 of the U.S. could face energy shortfalls during the periods of extreme heat this summer. Have you looked at next week's forecast? This is a recipe for disaster. We're hoping that we can get through this, but it's gonna impact us, whether it's in rates or possible potential blackouts, brownouts. We're gonna see it if the temperatures continue to climb like they are. Demand growth and generation retirements take away from flexible, dispatchable generation needed to maintain reliable capacity is one of our issues. 141 million U.S. residents were impacted with capacity constraints in 2022. That's a big number. I don't know how you can't look at that and say that's a concern. And for whatever reason we are. So here's Senator Lee talking to the gentleman that runs NERC. Oh,
I'm just going to point this
freeze.
down again. We're ready.
I'll go back, sorry.
Oh, we're good. Go ahead.
Now I messed it up. I'm gonna have to go back 2 slides. Sorry, my bad.
Mr. Robb, I'd like to start with you. NERC, the organization that you lead, is the reliability watchdog for the grid. Is that fair to say?
That's a fair characterization.
And I think most of us can agree that coal-fired power plants are being retired prematurely, which is especially alarming when you look at the realities on the ground, when you consider things like the fact that when replacement baseload power supply has not been brought online, we need to be worried about this. Tell me why this trend should be troubling to us, or is it troubling to you?
It's highly troubling because we're retiring these plants before their attributes are being fully replaced. And their attributes are more than just the energy that they produce. One of the important things, it's a little esoteric, but one of the important things that these plants provide is the ability for the grid to maintain voltage and maintain frequency and to resist disturbances. Other resources can't do that nearly as well as large spinning mass generation. And that's why the loss of coal plants and natural gas plants and nuclear plants is so concerning from a grid reliability perspective.
Think about what he just said. Robert Bryce in Energy Analysis says this: it will take 282 years for us to build the infrastructure with transmission lines to accommodate the want and the need to someday convert over to 100% renewable. 282 years. Who's going to be here? Our kids, our grandkids. Who's going to pay the costs of this? Those are things that we're just trying to inform people that we're up against. So if we break this down in our service territory, this doesn't look much better. And I apologize for that. We're doing everything within my power to provide capacity so that you folks can electrify wells. That's what we want. We're in the business to sell power. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when you knocked on our door, you folks were really frustrated because what were we telling you? Sorry, we can't help. We have no capacity. We have nothing on the shelf. We can't sell you power. That forced you folks to start trying to think outside of the box. Well, if they can't, how are we going to get it? What are we going to do? Are we going to start using the idea of flare gas and do we need to put solar? Will solar work? And you're finding out that doesn't work. And so we've taken steps now to try to bring an additional 100 megawatts into our service territory. That's what we're calling the Bonanza 2 line. We, 2 years ago, thought we had this really good feeling that was only going to cost $25 million. I want to take a stab at what it's going to cost me now to build this line. $39 million. That's about $700,000 per mile of line. So if you think about $700,000 per mile of line, and it takes 282 years to build the infrastructure to be able to accommodate a future of 100% renewable, you got some real dollars there. And we're just trying to build a 46-mile line. What do we have to do? We go and get financing. We lucked out. I call it luck. My CFO says it's divine intervention. It's a combination of both. We were able to secure that loan for 3.3%, 3.38% interest. Any stabs at what interest is now? I mean, because we were able to look forward thinking outside of the box and get this done, we saved our members almost 4% of interest over a 30-year term. And we finally just bit the bullet and said, we got to get this done because we are sick and tired of the oil producers showing up at our front door saying we need power and us saying, sorry, we're the only shop in town, but we can't provide you any. And so we're doing everything we can. The red dotted line shows the Bonanza 2 line that's coming through. 33 miles of that is on BLM property. That's a 15-year permitting process. That's not easy. We were able to get that done in 7 years. We've already finalized the permitting process. They've given us a thumbs up, and we put this project out to bid. I'll talk about that here in just a second. I'll go through this stuff really quick, but this is kind of where it's at. The engineering's complete on it. That was quite the process too. The bid packet was released on June 12th. 450 pages was the bid packet for this job, for this 40-mile line that will bring us 46 miles. That's going to bring us 100 additional megawatts. Just on the bidding process, that was 450 pages of bid packet. The due date's July 24th. The contractor will be awarded in August, and we hope that construction will be complete in 2025. We will then at that point have an additional 100 megawatts that we can sell to our members. The real challenge of that is we've got to get it to the places that we have capacity constraints. That's not just right in Roosevelt. That's everywhere west of Vernal that we currently have capacity constraints. That's really frustrating for you guys. It's really frustrating for us, but we are working as fast as we can to do it. You want to talk in terms of budget? We just approved this budget, almost $20 million for upgrades in our transmission system that we will be doing. Those are some of the projects that we'll be doing right there, and those total up to nearly $20 million. Again, that's got to come from someone. We've got to be able to figure out how to pay for this. If you look outside of transmission and you just start talking distribution, well, now we've got nearly a $7.4 million on top of a $19 million budget that we have to come up with to try to just maintain our system, to do upgrades, to make sure that we don't have a dilapidated system for years to come. Because if that's the case, at some point someone has to pay for it. And that's going to be our kids and our grandkids. And we're going to be able to sit in our recliner and say, gosh, back in my day, I paid 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And the kids are going to say, what? We're paying 30. That's not fair to them. These projects are not fair to the future Americans that's going to have to pay for it. And it's going to go on their backs.
Of of components. It's a system of generators, which are devices that actually create electricity from various primary sources of energy. That energy is then delivered through a delivery system that transmits and delivers that electricity to the places where we consume it, to our houses, businesses, or whatever. There's over 400,000 miles of transmission lines. There's over 5 million miles of distribution lines in the U.S. And all of that is worked together to make sure that when you flip that switch on in your house, the light comes on just then. And grid operators actually have to manage it so that just in time that energy is there when it's needed, because they have to maintain a balance at all times between supply and demand. So it's pretty complicated. There's the eastern grid, there's the western grid, and then there's a grid that's a big portion of Texas, not quite all of it. Those grids are very, very loosely interconnected. So the connections between those three grids are what we call asynchronous, meaning that an issue that starts to happen and hopefully would never actually cascade into a complete blackout, that wouldn't go beyond those individual grids. We really want to avoid any type of event that could result in a long duration outage. But when they do happen, we want to be able to recover very quickly.
Did you hear what he said? 400,000 miles of transmission line, 5 million miles of distribution line. He talked about the energy imbalance market. Our 460 megawatts that's produced at Bonanza plant, that doesn't just stay in our service territory. That goes to what's called an energy imbalance market. And those folks decide where that power goes. Well, where does power flow? I've said this over and over again. It flows towards money. If Los Angeles goes off and Roosevelt City goes off, where's the energy imbalance market going to ship the power? Is it coming our way? No. Can you guys imagine what that's going to do in your business? I mean, on top of the fact and the fear of deaths happening because of this, and that may be a little over the top to think that, but that's the reality of it. What's it going to do economically to us? It's going to be devastating. We can't let this type of stuff happen. At the very beginning, I showed you a photo of an outage that took place with our Cove switch. We had one of our engineers sitting up on the hill, and he took this video. So just pay really close attention to what it looks like when it's energized. And keep in mind, this is a planned outage. So you'll see some cars driving through here. You'll also see some lights on in the background, but those are the folks that have generators. Those are the folks that have another source of power. They may be the folks that have some solar with battery too. We have some of those on our system. And so just watch this real quick. I got ahead of myself, sorry. That doesn't have any noise, so I couldn't tell if I'd flipped it. I gotta go back. I'll figure this out by the end of it. I don't know why that's not playing, but we're going to get to know each other really well. Thanks, man.
That's great. No problem.
It's just a real quick clip, and if we can't get it going, no big deal. You're probably right. It's probably not embedded in the...
Yeah. Looks like it's just a thumbnail.
So what happens basically here is it goes from there, it goes from this middle section of lights to the top and bottom section. I mean, that's what a brownout and a blackout is. It's black. That was for about 45 minutes. You want to have something like this and be the CEO of a cooperative, plan to have more than one phone, because you can't answer the phone calls coming in. But one of the ones that I did answer was Steve Evans, and he said, "What are you doing to me? We have a concert tonight. You can't do it at 15 minutes before the concert ends." And so those are things that we just don't take into consideration. I mean, that was just one of the hundreds of phone calls I took that night, and we had advertised this for almost a week that it was going to happen. And so that seems a little less dramatic than a hospital or a care center or a major surgery, those types of things. Grocery stores. I mean, a concert versus a care center or a hospital. I mean, that's kind of what we're up against. Anyway, long story short, what have we done in the last year? I talked about a lot of this stuff. We have work plans in place. We've partnered with oil producers to bring $10 million through contribution and aid to help with the cost of the line. Kudos to you folks. That helps us keep costs down. We've met with Representative Curtis and talked about these very issues. We've talked about Senator Romney's staffers and Senator Lee's staffers. We've talked in depth with most of our local representatives. And then, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we've put out an energy crisis declaration, just trying to hit the alarm button for the folks that aren't familiar with this whole process. And then our board of directors have recently returned capital credits to our members. That was approved, and that will put us up to $47 million that we have returned back to our members in the form of patronage and capital credits. Probably took longer than I should have. I apologize for that, but these are very sensitive issues. So thanks for the time. I appreciate you allowing me to come, and I'd be happy to field questions afterwards. Right up front.
Will you explain that NEPA phase 2?
So I was afraid this was going to happen. Well, let me go back to it. From the beginning. And we could probably spend all day on these, so I'll try to be as quick as I can with them. Excuse me. These are hot off the press. We have a group that's called NRECA, and it's the National Rural Electrification Cooperative that 900 of us lean on them for our lobbyists, for lack of a better term. They recently came out with these 9. In fact, it was just yesterday that these came out. But I do have the dialogue and the backing and the explanation for each one of them that I'd be happy to give you my card, and I can get you that information.
Well, I looked it up on the internet. It looks like we're going to have to go back and do a 4-year review.
And that's what all of these are, is just more red tape. You know, it's ultimately, at the end of the day, this may not be fair or accurate, but it's the way we feel. It's pressures to get us out of the business. And it's super frustrating and concerning. We just have to stay steady and not give up and be strong, but it is frustrating. And you folks deal with this on a daily basis too. I'm not telling you anything you don't deal with on a daily basis. But great question. I can get you more information on that if you'd like. Someone right back there.
Why don't you use the microphone?
Sure.
Are you advising people to buy generators?
You know, I think if you were to ask that question to every one of the 900 cooperatives, they would say yes. In fact, there's an engineer who's also a representative. Some of you may know him. His name's Colin Jack. He put out an article about a year ago that said, "Why I will have a generator on my home."
Okay, so you're advising that.
I don't know that.
What power source do you?
I would just say that
Advise.
it's something a person ought to look into until things calm down, until things change from an administration level. We got to protect ourselves. And what we're doing right now in our office is we're compiling a worst-case scenario plan. And that is, in the event we experience a brownout or a blackout, who do we need to get power to immediately? And we're putting that list together. In fact, I have my team, my engineering team, compiling that list. And there's things that we hadn't even thought of. I mean, you don't think about water improvement districts needing power. people needing water in their home. You just don't think about that stuff. And so then we started saying, well, where do they fit in the mix? And then the next question we have, and maybe this will help answer your question, is we want to know who on our system has a generator. So then we don't have to worry as much about them. Does the hospital have one, and how long can it run? Does Stewart's have one, and how long can it run? Does Jubilee have one, and how long can it run? So those are things that we're looking at.
Okay, so are blackouts or brownouts that you're anticipating, is the cause of that a lack of coal or a demand for power beyond your capacity?
You know, in this business here, you guys will, that's a great question. All these are great questions. I really appreciate this. But in this business, you guys know this better than anyone. There's not a lack of resources in the United States of America. There's a lack of ability to get to them. And that's not because we can't. That's because we're restricted from getting to them. Great questions. Thank you, sir.
I got a question. What is the date of our Deseret plant to be scuttled out here?
I hate this question. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it's really not my position to talk about it, but I will say that I'm involved with all their board meetings, and I will say that they're highly concerned and they are looking at all alternatives. They would like to run that as long as we could run it because it's a reliable, affordable source of power. If we get regulated, I mean, as it stands right now, and this will probably muddy the water, but the life of the plant has already exceeded what it should. And we're trying to run a dead horse to the finish line. Why? That's what I don't want to get into because I have different opinions on that, but it is what it is. They're looking at putting in these natural gas recips to kind of help maybe put energy back into the grid in the event of these high temperatures, that we can, if nothing else, we can sell it for a high, we being Deseret, they can sell it for a higher rate. They put in a 15 megawatt natural gas recip in Flaming Gorge, and they're looking at putting a 50 megawatt natural gas recip at the Bonanza plant. Ultimately, in my opinion, and I might get crucified for this, but that needs to be a natural gas plant. But that's my opinion. Great question. I might get off fairly easy. While it's quiet, let's end. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate Yankton presenting that. It's very enlightening, isn't it? Even though we're doing oil and gas, there's always down the road things that it's concerning, so appreciate it. We'll now turn the time over to Alan Walker. I've known Alan for many years. He's been a good friend and helped us out, and now he's a member of our board, and we appreciate his insight to what he gives to our board meetings and his direction to the division. So I'll turn the time over to Alan. Let me get you up here.
Thanks, John. While John's bringing up my presentation, first off, I'd like to introduce our new outreach marketing director, Brooke Tucker. She just came to EGI. She's been to EGI for about 2 or 3 years, and she's now just recently promoted. And so when you have questions on contact information and stuff like that, please see Brooke. So, there you go. Okay. Okay, there's 4 things I'd like to talk about today. Predominantly, I'm going to talk about our new Resilient Energy Engineering Certification Program, but I'd like to just go over a few highlights on what the Energy and Geoscience Institute is and what we do. Quick highlight on our drilling program at the Utah Forge facility down in Milford, so you can have an update there. And then I'd like to announce our annual technical conference, which is coming up in September 18th to 21st in Salt Lake City. So, okay. There we go. Okay, so
The Energy and Geoscience Institute, we're located in Research Park and on campus at the University of Utah. We refer to ourselves as EGI, so I'll use that acronym going forward. We've done research for the oil and gas industry for 51 years now. Last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, and we've done over $850 million worth of research. And over our 50 years, that's about $1.5 million a month that we've done for the oil and gas industry, the geothermal industry, and also for carbon sequestration. We currently have about 45 scientists and engineers working on those three areas, oil and gas, geoscience, and also we're now doing some work on rare earth elements and critical minerals. If you want to learn more about EGI, it's real easy. You can look us up at egi.utah.edu. So that's our website, and there's plenty of information there. Any questions about EGI before I go on to the next couple topics? Okay. Next topic I'd like to talk about is Utah Forge. This is at $220 million of research. This is the University of Utah's largest research project in its history. This project is being conducted 10 miles north of, right near the Blundell geothermal plant. It's about 10 miles north of Milford. It's a great place to do research, and you'll appreciate this because there are very little human impact out there, no animals that have to be protected, there's no potable water. There was about 250,000 pigs out there, but they're gone now, and there are no cultural sites that we have to deal with. So nobody cares that we go out there and mess up the turf. So, or we haven't run into anybody that cares so far. But it's essentially a project to take the technology and information that we've developed by drilling tens of millions of oil and gas wells and apply it in a geothermal environment. So they've really taken advantage of what we've learned over time. So far, we've drilled 7 wells. 5 of those are monitoring wells for seismic activity, water quality, and that sort of thing, temperature changes. But then the 2 big wells are, the one's an injection well. And I'm going to, is that mic here available? The injection well is on this diagram, is that blue line. And that was drilled, and I'll just walk over here real quick. This blue line is our injection well. That was drilled a year ago, and it was drilled at 8,500 feet true vertical depth, and it's a 10,000-foot well. It's deviated at the bottom, and what it is deviated to do is to intersect the hottest part of the geothermal pluton that we have down there, and then it was stimulated. I'll go over here just to make sure you guys see the same thing. This blue well is our injection well, and that was done last year. It was stimulated in 3 intervals. Part of it's open hole, part of it's cased, and then we did 3 hydraulic stimulations. We measured the seismic interpretation, came out to about 450-foot tip on our stimulation. And so then we came back, and we are just completed about 10 days ago, finished drilling our injection well. Now the injection well was drilled 300 feet above the existing production well. I'll show you guys over here. And the intent of drilling that well 300 feet above it so it could intersect the fracture stimulation that we did last year, so that we make sure that we have communication between the 2 wells. And we just finished a conductivity test. We established about, it's not big, real impressive, but a half a Darcy of permeability in solid granite that's at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, we've run a whole bunch of tools in here. Almost nothing works except the drill bit. The drill bit works really well, but as far as our other measurement while drilling and logging while drilling, very poor results. Just no tools, no isolation tools, no packers. None of that stuff works really well at 400 degrees. But I just thought I'd give you a quick update on that. Any questions on Utah Forge project down there? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so the big thing I wanted to talk about today is a new program we're rolling out that's going to help with workforce developments. This is our Resilient Energy Engineering Certification Program. Now, we're looking at resiliency as going beyond sustainability, so we can deal with a lot of the topics that you just talked about. As you all know, being in this industry, there's a lot of misinformation that's put out, and what we want to do is develop a workforce that is able to deal with a lot of that misinformation and make sure that they can make the right assessments and technical analysis such that we can do that. So the topics, the 5 courses that we have in this certification program, first one is on alternative energy technology. It's going to be taught this fall, starting August 21st, by Dr. Mohanty. And it's going to cover all the renewable energy types, talking about hydrogen, wind, solar, bio, geothermal, and next generation nuclear. And it's so that a lot of these myths that you hear talked about in media can be dealt with, and so you know the truth. And so that we have engineers and scientists that can deal with those things. The next one is also going to be taught this fall. That's a course by Dr. Parvanya. And this will focus on energy optimization, things like smart grid, how to balance this system when renewables are brought on. Also things like cybersecurity threats to our system. And then the third program that we're going to have this year is if you go to register for this, you're going to find it's called Petroleum Geoscience. We're in the process of adding additional information to it, but it's Dr. Razul Sarkabi. And Dr. Sarkabi is going to teach about all the geologic information and the geoscience of not just how do you store hydrogen. You know, you keep hearing about talks about there's going to be a hydrogen kind. Well, it's not very it's not going to be easy. We're not very far along on that. So he's going to talk about hydrogen, all the other minerals. He's going to talk about rare earth elements and those sorts of things. And then in the springtime, we've got 2 other courses. One's going to be taught, it's called Energy Entrepreneurship, Society, and Policy. And it's going to address a whole lot of the things that you're talking about on these 9 regulations that you're dealing with all the time, and how to deal with those things, and what's going to be able to be waived and what won't be able to be waived, and that sort of thing. So we're dealing with a lot of the issues that you brought up. And the other course is going to be done by Dr. Brian McPherson. That's on carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. That's how to capture the carbon credits, how do you sequester CO2, and it's going to also deal with lots of things on EOR and that sort of thing. So this is we're really excited about this. The first phase is going to be a professional certification program, predominantly focused on college seniors and graduate students in phase 1. So these first 5 classes are going to be predominantly focused on those. I know there are people in the Uinta Basin that are enrolling in the course. So it can be done remotely. Particularly, I know someone talked to Dr. Sarkabi just yesterday about it, and we have some people in other states that are going to enroll and are going to do it remotely. In phase 2, we're going to modularize this whole program such that all the workforce that's involved in energy can pick up the individual components that they want to learn about and take those courses. You don't have to take all 5 courses. If you want to just learn about hydrogen storage, you'll be able to go and get a module and do hydrogen storage. I know that I saw Dr. Sarkabi's syllabus yesterday. He's got 6 different modules that he's going to have here. And if you want to look at, if you just want to look at rare earth elements, he's going to be able to give you some training on rare earth elements and that sort of thing. So any questions on this? Yes, Ricky?
When is your phase 2 going to roll out?
It's going to be about a year. Yes, the question was, when is phase 2 going to roll out? What we want to do is we want to record all of these, modify them and perfect them so that when they're available for the rest of the workforce, they're in really good shape and easy to get. You'll be able to go just on, like if you're going to sign up at the University of Utah and take a harmonica course, you could take the same thing here. And they'll be very inexpensive. You can take them anytime you want. You can sit there in your jammies and learn about hydrogen storage if you want to do things like that. Yeah. Yes, John?
Is it standard tuition, or is there a different tuition for something like that?
Okay, for the students, it's standard tuition, and for industry, it's going to be what you pay for, training out in industry and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be as cheap as like a guitar course or harmonica, but we do have to recover the costs to promote this program. Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
Are these courses built with an expectation that the people enrolling will have a background in geology or engineering?
Yeah, for this first go-round, the prerequisites are you're going to have an engineering or a science degree. So, if you have a business degree, you're going to have a tough time with the modeling, and that's why we're going to do phase 2. So it's softened down, so you don't have to know, you don't have to have 3 years of calculus to do it. But you do, right now, you have to have at least 1 year of calculus to handle the stuff that they're going to throw at them. And then they're going to modularize it and make it so that the rest of the workforce can deal with it. Mm-hmm. Good question, great. Yes, sir.
For people that have the 2-year, for individuals that have the 2-year vocational degrees, will on some of these courses you maybe add additional material for those kind of students? Because I can visualize that in the future, that might be a student base that might be interested in something like this.
Yeah, phase 2 is going to, this first phase, these are all technical electives for matriculated students. But 1 year from now, it'll be offered so that anybody in the workforce that wants to enroll and step up and take the course will be able to take the courses. Yeah. So I think, the folks with a 2-year technical degree are going to be well positioned to get involved in phase 2. Very good question, thank you. Any other questions then? We do have flyers here if you want to grab one of our flyers. And I've told John that this whole slide deck can go on the website so that if you have any questions or further, see myself or Brooke, and we can give you one of the flyers. And if you want to know more about it, you can just go to egi.utah.edu, and it's right on our website. It's right very first page. Okay, last thing I want to talk about then is our conference. I'd like to invite interested parties to attend our annual technical conference. We've done these for about 50 years, and we think we need to broaden our audience, so I'm here to invite y'all to come if you want to register. You can go to egi.utah.edu and register, or you could hit our QR code there. But it's going to be September 18th to the 21st at the Marriott Hotel in Salt Lake City. It's free. You just and you get breakfast and lunch every day too out of it. It starts on Monday, and that's just a social to get together with the folks that come from out of town, and so we'll have an icebreaker there at the Marriott, starting about 6 o'clock. Tuesday, the topics are going to be predominantly geothermal science. That's the folks that are running Forge. They're going to be talking to us there. Also, our carbon sequestration, Dr. McPherson and his team on carbon sequestration, they'll each have a 3-hour block for their technical presentations and their proposals. That evening, we do have a dinner, so you'll be able to RSVP for that if you wish to come. Wednesday is predominantly on oil and gas and critical minerals, geoscience. That's Dr. Sorkabi and his group will be going over that. And then in the afternoon, it'll be energy innovations and efficiency. Dr. Cody Powell will be talking about things that happen on the surface. We do most everything we do is below the surface, but Dr. Cody Powell is bringing us up to the surface so that people can see what we're working on out there. Thursday is really exciting to us. We're going to have a field course, and it's going to go to the Bonneville Salt Flats and beyond. We're going to talk about the depositional history of the Great Salt Lake. We're going to dig, there's some trenches out there. We're going to get in those trenches and dig those, or there's a archaeological cave out there called Danger Cave. We're hoping to get inside of it. And we're going to talk about the current challenges to the Great Salt Lake and what that has as far as environmental impact. So again, look at egi.utah.edu and all that information is there for you. Do I have any questions? Any other questions? Brooke, did I miss anything that I needed to cover? Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are missing one of our presenters, so why don't we take an early break here till about 10:35. Okay. Do you got no go?
Okay, everybody, we're getting ready to get started again.
Okay, if we could take our seats, we'll get started with our next presentations. Where's Dan? Oh, there he is. I was looking for you over there. Okay, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. It's Dan Yates. He's the executive director from the GWPC. I've known Dan for many years, and we appreciate him coming out. I'd like to turn some time over to our director of the Oil, Gas, and Mining Program, is John Baza, and he'd like to say a few things about the GWPC program and Dan. So.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Baza. I'm the director of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. We sponsor these events and really appreciate the support we get from the county and this fine facility that we're in. We've enjoyed these meetings for quite a few years and in this location, and it's amazing to see, for me to see how it's grown and the amount of participation we get. Hopefully you're getting as much out of this as we are by putting them on. I did want to talk about Groundwater Protection Council in general before I turned it over to Dan Yates, who's their executive director. Groundwater Protection Council is an organization of states. Utah has been a member state in Groundwater Protection Council for going on 20 years, I think. And it is an organization that is kind of at the nexus of both the energy world and the water world. It started out with the concept that there were these injection wells that were being used to manage water, but the range of issues that Groundwater Protection Council deals with has expanded tremendously. I myself was involved in a study that came out about 6-7 years ago on produced water. And it really was a primer for how produced water is handled throughout the United States and what its potential was for other reuse. So that was an amazing study, but that's just one of the things that Groundwater Protection Council has done over the years. And during that same period of time, I've known Dan. He's become a fixture at these meetings. I think we've had him out for about the last 3 years. And he's telling me on the drive out from Salt Lake that he's come to love and appreciate Duchesne. And he comes from Oklahoma City, and the climate is much nicer here than where it is in Oklahoma right now. So I won't belabor this, but appreciate Dan making the trip from Oklahoma City and coming here and presenting to us again. Thanks, Dan.
Great, thanks a lot, John and John, both of you. So yeah, I'm Dan Yates. Like John said, I'm really glad to be here. I currently live in Oklahoma City. That's where I lived for about 20 years. But I grew up in the Oklahoma Panhandle, and it's much higher and much drier in the Oklahoma Panhandle. And I never had, growing up, any allergies or any of those kinds of problems until I moved a little bit further south. And the climate actually changes quite a bit from northwest Oklahoma in the Panhandle down to the central part of the state. And then the last 5 or 6 weeks, we have just been inundated with rainfall. And from where I grew up, you don't complain about the rain. But if I was going to, I would say that with the rain comes lots of live things moving around in the atmosphere. So it's actually a nice break for me to come and be somewhere a little higher and a little drier. It's quite the trip to get here. From Oklahoma City, I have to go south to Dallas, and then I have to fly west to Salt Lake City, and then I have to drive back east to Duchesne. So I've kind of made a big triangle, but I'm really happy to be here. This is a really great facility, and it's just really good for me to be able to touch base with the oil and gas industry here in the state of Utah. I like to do that. I travel quite a bit and talk to a lot of groups, and so it's just really good for me to get to interface with you all, the people that are actually here on the ground doing things. So I'm going to today, my main conversation to have with you all is about produced water management in the United States, some of the trends that we're seeing, and then some of the resources that are available that I hope you all will find useful. Everything I'm talking about today is accessible on the Groundwater Protection Council website, so that's pretty easy. www.gwpc.org. And then if you click on the resources link and go to publications, you will find several of the reports and studies that I'm talking about today. And then you can kind of peruse those. One thing I always like to lead with is that I'm in no way an expert in any of these topics. I'm not a geologist or an engineer. I'm at best a social scientist, and I don't really even do any of that kind of work. I'm a people person, and I'm a communications person. So I'm just here to tell you about a lot of the great work that other people have done, right? But then hopefully to kind of share a little bit of information with you. So today I'm going to talk, again, just a little bit about my own background and about who the Groundwater Protection Council is and what we do nationally, who we interface with. And then I'd like to talk just very, very briefly about data management. Last year, if you were here for the meeting that I attended, I talked mostly about data management, but I'd just like to do a little bit of a refresh there because it shows how we are very, very involved with the DNR here in Utah and some of the work that we're doing nationally on regulatory data management and how that hopefully makes your lives easier as well. So I want to promote that just a little bit. Then I'm going to talk about produced water reuse and management across the nation and some of the trends that we're seeing, and again, some of the resources that are available to you all. Talk about some of the tools that are available and some of the studies that are being done on produced water. I'm going to hit just real lightly on critical minerals, which Alan mentioned earlier, and the potential that we're seeing in a lot of states for pulling critical minerals out of produced water. I'm going to talk about some of the produced water consortiums, the statewide consortiums that are cropping up. There's 3 that have gotten started, and we think we're going to see more. And then there's some national coordination amongst those consortiums. I'll talk about the project we're doing in the Appalachian Basin on helping promote water buying, selling, and trading within the oil and gas industry. And then I'm going to conclude with a little bit of discussion on some of the work that the Groundwater Protection Council has done related to seismic activity with either the production or more likely the injection of produced water, and how we're helping foster the communication there, and then also creating tools for states. So that's a broad overview of what I'm gonna do today. But like I said at first, I want to talk just a little bit about who we are, the Groundwater Protection Council. It's a little bit of a confusing name. Not that we don't focus on groundwater, we do. That's our number one focus, is focusing on underground sources of water, specifically on what are labeled underground sources of drinking water, and how we can foster the protection of underground sources of drinking water and groundwater across multiple industries, working with state agencies. But one of the things I think that gets a little bit confusing about our name is that what it doesn't tell you is that we're a national association of state agencies. So state agencies from across the United States are the members of our organization. That's who we serve. It's both the oil and gas regulatory agencies from many states, as well as the water quality agencies, usually called a Department of Environmental Quality, but not always. Every state calls things something different. So it's the programs that manage the non-Class 2 UIC programs, the other classes, and the programs that manage groundwater resources across the state. So that's who we are and who we serve. We would do a lot of work on capacity development for our state agencies. As I'm sure you're seeing in your own industry, we're seeing a lot of turnover nationwide for state agencies, and we're seeing a really competitive job market. So a lot of our role is providing education and training for ongoing continuing ed, as well as training new staff as they come on board, giving them the history of the UIC program and some of these other programs. So that's a lot of the work we do, put on conferences and put on trainings and that sort of thing. So I like this slide because it shows you some of our geographic diversity across the country. The shaded states you see now, that's simply our current board of directors. And so we have, we use the EPA regions for the way we do our board of directors, solely because we were created just about 40 years ago to have a focus on the UIC program. That's comes out of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And so the states that engage with EPA on the UIC program do that through the regional offices. And so it's just kind of an artifact of time. So out of the 10 EPA regions, there's anywhere from 4 to 5, 6 states in each region. We get 2 board members from each. And so our board members are people like John Baza, who run an oil and gas regulatory program, or people who run a water quality program in a DEQ type agency. And again, our primary role is to help build state capacity so that those agencies can fulfill their groundwater protection roles. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do. So I told you I was going to bore you a little bit to talk about RBDMS. You don't have to memorize this. It stands for Risk-Based Data Management System. About 25 or 26 years ago, several states came to the Groundwater Protection Council, and we were mainly talking about Class 2 wells, saltwater disposal wells, and the reporting that they had to do to the federal government. And they said, we need some help on managing the data so we can fulfill our reporting requirements to EPA. And so we banded together about 7 states at the time and helped create a data management system for Class 2. And then very quickly thereafter, as states got to use the system, they discovered that, well, if it can manage UIC data, it can manage any type of well data. And so it's a well-centric data management system. It's in use right now by 27 states. Utah is one of them. Utah really is one of the leaders for us, with a lot of innovation happening here that then gets shared out to other states. And the reason I like to really kind of promote the data management work that we do is that by pulling together multiple states, we're all sharing in the resources. We're making each state's implementation of new data management tools faster and cheaper because we can learn from each other. And I wanted to cover just a few, and again, last year I went into lots of depths about each of these that are being used here in Utah, and how Utah really is a leader within the Groundwater Protection Council on data management. But here's just a sampling of some of the applications. The seismic monitoring app I'm going to talk about late in my talk today. WaterStar is one of our newer applications where we're helping states manage produced water data, laboratory data. In Nebraska, they're using it to manage nutrient plumes across the state and see where the nutrients are moving and where they need to make decisions based on water quality. We have, calculating and managing area of reviews. It takes a pretty large amount of data, so we build tools that help kind of pull all that data together, make decision-making quicker and easier, make permit review quicker and easier. That's something that benefits you all. And so just a lot of benefits from there. And we're hoping, of course, that Utah will be an ongoing long-term partner with us in data management. One of the kind of small outcrops of this, and you all should know about this tool because you can download it on your phone, iPhone or Android. It's called RBDMS Well Finder. And it is very simply dots on a map that if you drive by a well or you're looking for a particular well, you can find it on the map, click on it. It will give what I call header data, just high-level summary data. It will tell you the owner of the well. It will tell you the lat and long, the type of well it is. Is it injection? Is it oil? Is it gas? Or a combination? And all of the data in Well Finder for Utah is powered by Utah's RBDMS system, right? So we're not getting this data anywhere else. We're getting it directly from Utah DNR, but it's multiple states. So that's one of the exciting things about it. If you happen to do work in other states or are just curious about it, to my last count, I think there's about 15 states in Well Finder, and we're working with additional states to add them in as well. And one of the new tools that was recently added was driving directions. So then you can actually use Well Finder for driving directions. And what we're seeing in some states is that the field inspectors and people who check wells for a living are using Well Finder just to kind of plan out their days, and drive from one well to the next. So that concludes my data management soapbox for the day, but I just really like to promote that because I think it's really important work that we do, and ultimately is a direct connection to protecting groundwater, because if you don't have the data to make the important decisions you need to make and make them correctly, then it just makes everything more difficult. So we're streamlining those processes, and in the meantime, we're making things easier for the industry because we've got more data tools, direct connections. So I'm going to move on now to my kind of the meat of my topic today is produced water management in the United States. Some of the things that we at the council have learned, some of the resources that we've got available, and I hope you find this interesting and beneficial for you. So as we look back kind of to the prior decade, say going kind of 2012 and into the past, the management of the kind of unconventional shale plays was in its infancy, and two things were happening. Water needs were going up for hydraulic fracturing operations, and often amounts of water you were getting out of the ground with production were going up. So we had kind of these two issues. This is prior to the emergence of what we call the midstream water industry, right? So these are kind of just the early days, and there was a lot of volatility. Seismicity was peaking up in certain places as a big issue, especially in Oklahoma, where I live. And there were regulatory challenges. What is allowable? What is not allowable? Do our statutes help or hinder the movement of produced water to aid in production? And so just kind of, not the Wild West, but just early in its infancy. If we look back today, we know that there's been a lot of innovation on produced water in a lot of states. A lot of water sharing across the industry, buy, sell, and trading, the emergency of the midstream water industry. And I wanted just to share just a little bit of data just to kind of put it in perspective. So in 2021, 25.8 billion barrels of produced water were produced out of the ground, right? And so that equates to 2.9 billion gallons per day. That's nationwide, right? And so the Groundwater Protection Council is a huge promoter of produced water reuse. And in the number one area, and here's where I'm getting into topics where many of you in the room know a lot more about this than I do, but just to put a point on it, is that the number one way to beneficially reuse produced water is within the oil and gas industry itself, right? That's the number one. Still, the largest percentage of produced water is going down Class 2 wells, and we support that as well because we're a proponent of the Class 2 program. It removes produced water from the lived-in environment, and those wells are constructed in a way, as you all know, that protects the existing groundwater. So we're in no way saying we're trying to necessarily limit the amount that's injected, because that's still a very viable and technologically sound, but we're promoting communication and education on the potential for produced water reuse, because every molecule of produced water that's reused inside the industry is one molecule of fresh water that's not getting used, right? And so anywhere where we can find efficiencies, we're a big promoter of that. You all are the laboratory for that, right? You are the ones that figure out how to get that done in your projects, in your basins. But we're just trying to promote collaboration within states and across states so we can learn from each other. Ultimately, every molecule of water counts, right? We're looking at the big picture. How do we limit the use of fresh water for not just oil and gas, but industrial practices, and reuse water where that can happen? I'm going to talk a little bit more about the report where this data comes from later, and that's one of the ones that you can find on our website. So if we look at water management today and how the challenges have changed over the last decade and a half, is that, and I know that the Uinta Basin gives you some different challenges than maybe we see in the Delaware Basin and in other states. But nationally, what we're seeing is a trend where you go back 15 years ago, most of this produced water was in trucks, moving around the basin from one place to the other. And we're seeing both long-term and temporary pipelines kind of replacing that infrastructure to help move produced water either from one project to another or to holding basins where it can be treated and then sent back. So a pretty massive uptick in pipelines for water movement over the last 15 years, which is just, it's a new challenge, right? It's a different challenge than the challenge of trucks. We're seeing a pretty big uptick in beneficial reuse of produced water. Again, the primary area we're seeing that is within the oil and gas industry itself. But if you look across the country, we're seeing quite a bit of that. We're seeing some people start to look into mineral extraction from produced water. And so critical minerals and rare earth minerals are a big hot topic right now. Where are we going to find them? Can we produce them here in the United States rather than buying them for overseas to help with our own energy and other security? And one of the places we think that these critical and rare earth minerals may be able to be found is within produced water. So we've funded a project in Oklahoma and Kansas to evaluate produced water from several different locations to see, can we determine what critical minerals may exist so that operators or partnerships can kind of tool their potential future projects, so they're not necessarily looking just kind of for everything, but they know, okay, in this basin at this depth, you're more likely to find these things. And so what we're hoping nationwide is that the recovery of critical minerals can then just become part of the economic puzzle within the oil and gas industry to help make projects more economical and more long-term. If there is a way to efficiently pull out these critical minerals and those can be sold on the open market, that's just something that's going to help benefit each project. The other big change we've seen, as I mentioned previously, is just the emergence of the midstream water industry. So especially in Oklahoma and Texas, but other places as well, is just the, lots of movement by selling and trading of produced water between industries, between operators, and that's just really, really on the rise. Go ahead, John. Here it comes. And I'll just, while we're waiting, I'll just say, please interrupt me. I'm happy to pause, and you don't have to save it till the end.
I had just heard recently that in some other states, the concept of valuing produced water has created some legislation on perhaps taxes and royalties being paid on that produced water. Have you heard anything along those lines?
So I don't have anything concrete to share, but the conversations that are being had, right, is that if produced water is what we considered it a waste, right? This is just something to deal with, to get rid of, send it down a well, and then, sell the oil, right? As it starts to become a commodity and it's beneficial and you can maybe get critical minerals out of it, I think some of the questions when you look into state water rights and you look into state land rights is, if I'm the owner of this land and you're pulling produced water out and you're disposing of it, I don't care. But if you're pulling produced water out and you're producing critical minerals out of that and selling those, well, I start to care, because I'm only getting a royalty on, if I'm the mineral owner, I'm only getting a royalty on the oil and gas produced. I'm not getting a royalty on the critical minerals. And so I haven't heard anything definitive yet, but I've heard several states analyzing their existing rules and regulations and saying, okay, what does this look like? What decisions do we need to make going forward?
Are they selling and trading the water in different watersheds, or is it in the same watershed?
So mostly it's within the same basin, at least, if it's not within the same watershed. And speaking from Oklahoma, produced water isn't considered part of the freshwater watershed, right? So you can kind of avoid freshwater watershed rules because you're pulling a resource that isn't considered part of the waters of the state, right? And so I think, I don't know how to specifically answer your question about watershed. Mostly it's used within the same basin. That's because just the cost of transportation, right? But we think we're going to see some bigger scale projects. And on a totally separate topic, one of the proposed projects on the CO2 side is to pipe CO2 from Iowa to North Dakota for injection. So if you can pipe CO2 that far, you can pipe produced water pretty far. But what I haven't heard on the water quality side, because we deal with those agencies as well, and the state water agencies, is the idea of saying, hey, you can't move that water out of this basin, right? I think they're considering produced water out of the oil and gas field, it's not a fresh water, so there's no plus or minus if it's lost out of the basin. Does that help answer? Yeah, okay, good. So back on to data management a little bit. One of the other things that the Groundwater Protection Council manages is the Frac Focus website. We have a question? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Here it comes.
Do you know, in these different states, in Oklahoma and Kansas, is it considered the mineral owner or the surface owner that actually has the rights to that water?
I don't think we know yet, right? Because again, if it's a waste. It's a waste product that needs to be disposed of, right? And so I think these questions are getting asked. And I think what we'll probably find out is you're gonna have to look way down minute into each state's regulations and see what the answer is. I think it could be either, ultimately. And if I'm one or the other, I'm gonna stick my hand up and say, I think it's me, So yeah, that's a really good question that I don't know the answer to yet. And those are the kinds of obstacles that we like to wade in and help figure out, us and other groups like us, because, again, we want to promote beneficial reuse, and we want to promote the production of critical minerals in the United States, but again, if you're selling something and it came off of my land, I'm going to try to see if I can get a cut of that, right? I think that's just kind of economics 101. So Frac Focus is a national website that we operate. It's the development of that is tied into how we help states develop their own data management systems. Frac Focus, many of you probably have heard of it before. It is for the public disclosure of the chemicals used in hydraulic fracturing jobs. So again, it's a well-centric database. It's free and open to the public. It provides a data download, but more importantly, it provides data on an individual well basis. So if there's a well in your near you and you're curious to know about the chemicals that are used in hydraulic fracturing, you can find those on the website. Many states require industry to report to Frac Focus, and then we handle just kind of the centralized data management because, again, it was going to be cheaper to make one website for the nation than to make 27 websites for that all over. But one of the questions we've been asked recently on produced water is, could we allow within Frac Focus voluntary reporting of the volumes and where it came from for the water that's used in the frac job? So that's currently not required by any states, but we are working on an upgrade of Frac Focus right now. As you know, with any software, it's a lot of money over time. Software gets old and has to be redone, so we're putting a lot of our resources and federal dollars into updating the Frac Focus website so it can be long-term. And so we're adding this voluntary option for industry to report where did you get the water and what is that water? Was it fresh? Was it reuse and that sort of thing? We think that'll help show over time the increase in reuse. So we're a proponent of it, but again, it's not a requirement, and we don't have the authority to require it anyway. We're operating a website that's based on state regulation. I was told I could go a little bit over, so I'm going to try to go a little bit over, but not a lot over. Give me an inch, I'll take a mile, John. Another thing on the data management side is a system we call WaterStar. So think about the slide I showed previously, how we've got several modules of this RDMS program. We've got them for permitting. We've got them for field inspection data. We build the back-end databases that make all these things talk to each other. We help build the front-end websites for industry and public to interface with that data. And we got asked a few years ago about having more of a focus on water data. So we took a program that we had called RDMS Environmental, which was looking at non-well-centric data, other kinds of data that state agencies need to use. And we started with that. We kind of rebranded it as WaterStar, did some upgrades, and now that's the piece I talked about was being used in Nebraska for nutrient data management. In New Mexico, there's something called the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium, and we have introduced our WaterStar tool there to collect produced water data from multiple industry, agency, and research collaboratives, right? So it's a multi-partner group, the Produced Water Consortium. They do several things, but one of the things is they provide data on this website. And they're getting data, again, directly from the industry. They're getting data from research and industry groups. They're getting data from their own state agency. And the idea there is that in New Mexico, like a lot of other states, water is a precious resource. And one way to promote produced water reuse, which will again help offset the use of fresh water, is to collaborate on all this data where it makes sense, right? And so the New Mexico Consortium is promoting that, and the WaterStar system that we've built for them has both water quantity and water quality data. And it is not only available in New Mexico, anybody can log on to that system and see how produced water is being handled in New Mexico. So we think that's pretty exciting. So now I'm just going to talk about a few of the resources that are available. Additional reading, more homework for you all, or point your staff to it. In 2019, and this is the report that John talked about, the Groundwater Protection Council pulled together a large stakeholder group to develop a primer on produced water reuse at large across the nation. And what do we know and what do we not know? What's working? Where do we need more research? What's happening inside the oil and gas industry for reuse? What is happening outside the oil and gas industry for produced water reuse? What additional potential for reuse there is? And then what do we not know? The laundry list of things that need further study. It's a big, thick report. I didn't carry any with me because I was trying to, remember Dallas, Salt Lake City, Duchesne. I've been everywhere. But you can find that full report from 2019 on our website. And again, it's meant just to say, let's put down everything we know on paper from a real broad perspective. So fast forward to this year, from 2019 to 2023, lots of things happened in the world. You will remember some of them, but things have also happened that have changed in the industry. In the Delaware Basin in Texas and New Mexico, we're seeing a huge uptick in the amount of produced water that's being produced there. And so that, as the volumes go up, the challenges go up. So this updated report, which is shorter, it's like the first one was like this and this one's like this, really is just focusing on the how regulations have been updated across the country to help address these challenges, how produced water handling has changed within the industry, again, nationwide. Talks a lot about, again, what I've mentioned is the emergence of this midstream water industry and how that's helping these challenges, and just kind of gives a state of market on produced water regulation and practices. So looking at state government and looking at industry activity, both of those. So I recommend that one. And again, it's the shorter and the newer one. This next study that GWPC has now done 3 of these in intervals of about 3 years in between each. It's the Produced Water Volumes and Management Practices study. And this is more of a data-focused study. How much produced water is being produced to the best of our ability, how much that we can know, how much of it's being reused, and then some data on a state-by-state basis. And so really just the executive summary of that report, I think, is really beneficial. You can really read the first 3 or 4 pages and get a nice idea of this across the country. And then it also will show you some trends since we've been doing the study and redoing it every 3 years, what those trends have looked like. So we just released this report, but it's focused on 2021 data. So it's the most recent report of its kind that is available, and it's got a lot of good, charts and graphs and stuff. So maybe you don't even need to read it. You can also just look at pictures, which that's what I like to do. Just show me a chart, and don't make me read a paragraph. So there's that one. I mentioned the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. I had a conversation with John in the car on the way here about whether or not the plural of consortium was consortia or consortiums, and I was told that I could probably get away with using either one, and it would be fine, but then I couldn't resist. I had to Google it, and I found out both are correct. So consortia or consortiums, both of those are good. So far there are 3. There's the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. It's the longest in operation. It has a very pretty clear mission. It's got a kind of a management team coming out of a couple universities there to help that ongoing. They have routine meetings. Their purpose is, again, sharing data information to help promote produced water reuse within the state of New Mexico. Why? Because overall, it's going to help them with their larger freshwater management and their needs in that state. The second one is the Texas Consortium. It's coming along a little slower. They haven't quite, they've assigned a university to be in charge of that. They haven't quite stated their full mission and goals other than produced water is a big deal and maybe we ought to get together and talk about it. So it's a little slower going. And then finally, Colorado is the newest one. So your neighbor are developing a produced water consortium. The Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, very, very involved in that one. And again, their goals and ideas are very similar to New Mexico. Water shortage is a big deal. freshwater use inside not just the oil and gas industry, but for any industrial practices is one area where maybe we can find some wiggle room, kind of going back to my idea of every molecule counts. So government are involved in these consortiums. These are not government agencies, right? They are multi-stakeholder collaboratives. Should Utah have a produced water consortium? I don't think it's a bad idea for all of the same reasons that I've mentioned. But the models that we're seeing that work in states is multi-stakeholder. It can't be a top-down. It's got to be we all come together, openly talk about these, share beneficial practices across industry, but also with, identify where research is needed so the research institutes can do that research, and then share information where it doesn't hinder your own economic practices, so we can all just get a little bit better over time. So GAPC is a big promoter of those. And now what we're seeing is that there has been created a national group. It's a little less formal. It's basically any state that has any focus on produced water statewide can be a member of this national group. Mike Hightower out of New Mexico University is leading that, and it's an effort to pull each of these state consortiums together and say, okay, you're working inside of your state, but what can we do nationally? And if we all band together, can we get maybe some federal dollars to help us address some of these issues? So that's a really good group, and they hold a every other month virtual meeting, and so I can hook anybody up with that. And it's just, again, helping gain some traction for the importance of produced water reuse and where that can help us nationally on our water needs. Let's see how we're doing on time. Oh, good, I'm 6 minutes over, so I probably couldn't go another 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah? Okay. Okay, oh, whatever I need. Well, get comfortable, everybody. I'm going to add some slides. Right. No, I'm coming to the close. So just a couple other things that I wanted to mention, because again, it shows how this is being looked at as it's a local issue. Groundwater protection and produced water is a local issue, right? The real work that you can do really is in your local watershed, your local basin, working with your partners. But there's a big state interest and there's a big national interest. So I know some not kind words were said about EPA earlier today, and I can get with you there and talk about some of those things. But a good thing EPA has done is created what's called the RAP. It is similar to these consortiums. It's a volunteer kind of group. EPA staffs it, but it's a nationally focused group. The RAP stands for the Water Reuse Action Plan. And what the RAP is trying to do is pull together, beyond produced water, all different types of water reuse. Where are the challenges? Where are the successes? How can we communicate and collaborate? Lots of groups like Groundwater Protection Council are involved, lots of other state agency associations, so the drinking water programs from the states and the Clean Water Act programs that look at fishable, swimmable waters and that sort of thing, where water reuse is important to them because the less water you pull out of the lake, the more water we have for swimming and our jet skis and recreation. And so they're looking broadly at potable and non-potable water reuse, at stormwater reuse, aquifer storage and recovery, which is an issue that GAPC is really interested in. And then the National Produced Water Working Group that I just mentioned one slide ago, and the Groundwater Protection Council are kind of the ones that are carrying the torch inside of the RAP for produced water reuse, because we think that needs to be part of the national conversation, right? Potable and non-potable reuse are important, stormwater reuse is important, all these things, but we think produced water reuse is a big part of the pie, and we think we should all get credit for doing the work that we're doing. So we're very vocal inside of the RAP for that, the Water Reuse Action Plan. Okay, I think I only have 3 slides left, everybody. We're getting towards the end. I won't keep you from lunch. So some of our upcoming and ongoing work, I mentioned in the Appalachian Basin, we're helping the Department of Energy with a pilot project there to promote the buying, selling, and trading of produced water within the industry by developing a platform, like a software platform, where you can do that. And so it's been jokingly called, it's like a dating app for produced water, right? Swipe left if you have water, swipe right if you need water, right? And so the idea is to get the industry in the Appalachian Basin there to report what they have or what they need. Remember, trading baseball cards, everybody. Need it, got it, right? And then connect those people and then let them take it from there, right? So once the connection is made, then you go off the platform and you talk about, okay, I've got so many gallons or barrels of water of this quality available on these dates, and then figure out a way to buy, sell, trade that water. And so again, that's another way we're trying to promote water reuse, is trying to help make these connections in an area that doesn't really have this midstream industry active. And so if that's successful there, then I could see that going kind of further. What we're developing, the part that we're doing is we're helping develop the software platform, which will probably not be the long-term platform. It'll just kind of be the pilot study. How willing is the industry there to do this kind of work, and how beneficial could it be? And then we're going to continue to fund and foster work on critical minerals and produced water, and further that study. We have an annual meeting coming up in Tampa in September, where Kyle Murray from Oklahoma will be presenting that study so far, and then we're going to be working on future phases of that, again, just to promote critical minerals as a part of all this. So last, I wanted just to kind of end with talking a little bit about seismicity, and over the last decade where the Groundwater Protection Council has been involved in induced seismicity, and some of the things that we've done to help. So number one is we and the Department of Energy have helped fund the Regional Induced Seismic Collaborative. That is kind of the southern mid-continent states, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and what we're promoting there is having the geologic surveys from each of those states work together on tracking seismic data and building maps so we can see where it's happening, where it's not happening over time. And so fostering that group has been really important. We have an induced seismicity steering committee within the Groundwater Protection Council. That is state agencies, that is industry stakeholders, and then stakeholders from outside government or industry that are involved in that. And again, we're just trying to foster ongoing communication about what are we learning over time about seismicity. And then finally, the most important work we've done to date, and we've done this in Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, is we developed a application. So this is going back to the RBDMS where I started at the beginning of the talk. We've developed an application to help manage UIC and seismic data in these 3 states. And so this actually does a pretty straightforward thing, but it just hadn't been done before. Whereas we're pulling in seismic earthquake data from either the State Geologic Survey or the USGS or both. In Oklahoma, you can just kind of toggle back and forth. So those are the red dots are the seismic data. And then we're pulling in from the state agencies themselves the injection wells. So then the success story here in Oklahoma, if you followed the news going back to around 2014, 2015, we were having a lot of earthquakes. That's a big problem. We want to keep producing oil and gas, but we'd like to slow down the earthquakes. How do we do that? Well, the answer is data. You've got to gather the data to be able to make the decisions. And the Oklahoma Corporation Commission had a process that they were using where earthquake or earthquakes would happen. 2 or 3 people would start digging into their data to say, okay, what injection wells are in or near the area where we had an earthquake? What earthquakes do we know did or didn't happen, and where, and start to draw some conclusions so they could make determinations on a well-by-well basis to limit volumes and pressures, or to change zones of where the injection was happening. So then they would give an order to an individual company or a well to say, okay, based on this data, you need to slow your volume injection to this, or you need to monitor your pressure under this, or so on. That's a process that took them 2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 people 2 or 3 days from earthquake happening to make a decision and give industry a path forward. By building this application and pulling all the data at once, we took that 2 to 3 person, 2 to 3 day process and turned it into a 1 person, 5-minute process, right? So just really, really showing the saving a lot of time, getting information back out to the public faster, getting information out to industry partners faster. And we're not taking credit of it because of this app, but because of the good work of the Corporation Commission over the last 5 years, we've just seen an incredible decline in the seismic activity we're having in the state. Our industry is doing well. We're producing a lot of produced water and a lot of oil and gas and injecting it safely. So it's just a really big success story for us and for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. So that's it. Here's a couple of our websites. The GWPC website is the main one. That's where you can go to the resources and then publications page and find all the resources that I talked about today. If you're curious about the data management work we're doing, then you can go to the rbms.org page. That page is mostly designed for state agencies to find out about the different products we have available, but you might find that one interesting as well. Again, I'm Dan Yates. I'm the executive director. I've been executive director for about 1.5 years, but I've been with the Groundwater Protection Council for 23 years. 1 more year, I will have worked for Groundwater Protection Council for half of my life, so I'm very passionate about what we do. And like I said earlier, I grew up in the oil and gas field. Most of my family works in the oil and gas industry. And jokingly, when I was a kid, my grandmother said, well, what are you going to do when you grow up? And most of my family were either ranchers or oil and gas industry. And my response to my grandmother was, well, I don't know, but I'm going to wear a suit because I don't want to do this hard work that I see my family doing. And then fast forward 23 years later, and I spend most of my time working on oil and gas issues. But one note I'm going to make is I think I'm the only person in a sport coat. So if you invite me back to speak again, I'm leaving the coat at home, and I'm coming in a polo shirt in July in Duchesne, and just be a little cooler. I hope you do invite me back. A couple of the issues that we see coming down the pike that I could talk to you all about are the emergence of PFAS as a issue that we're definitely dealing with on the drinking water side, and where we see that's going to affect the oil and gas side. And so a year from now, I'll even know more about that and other issues as well. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have. Thanks again for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Hey, Dan, appreciate it.
All right, great. Thanks.
We got to do a swap out here.
Just the HDMI. There we go.
You got another UB for this?
What is this for?
Yes, if you want it.
Oh, okay, sure.
See them. Oh, there it is.
That'll work.
Okay. I'll just-
Do you need a voice test? Mic test? Good. Well, I don't know whether to thank Dan for taking my talk from 30 minutes to 15 or the other way around. We'll see how fast we get through this. I may jump through a couple of slides to get it done. I'm Bill Keach. I'm the state geologist for Utah. I'm the director of the Utah Geological Survey. And John, I'm Rogers and Baza, asked me to talk a little bit about what the UGS is doing in Utah and in particular in Uinta Basin. And I just thought I'd focus on a few of those areas. I had kind of an agenda here, just kind of random topics to cover. And like I said, I'll skip through them here fairly quickly. So when do you need me out here so they can eat? You tell me, John.
You know, we're about 10 to 12 will be fine.
Okay, we'll see how fast we get there. Okay, so those are kind of the topics, and I'm just going to jump into it. A big project that the U.S. Geological Survey has undertaken at the direction of the federal government and the Senate and the House of Representatives is to do a big initiative to map resources we have across the country related to critical minerals and rare earth elements. And so about a year ago, the USGS approached the state of Utah and said, we've got some money, we'd like to spend a bunch of it in your state to go do some things, which is pretty cool because there's a couple of big areas on the western side of the state where a lot of people haven't done a lot of work. And I'll talk about it, but part of this money impacted the Uinta Basin as well. But mapping versus, again, going after critical minerals to identify where we might have minerals. And the second part was to get LiDAR data, which is laser imaging technology. You fly an airplane and you can measure variations on about a half-meter resolution to about 2 centimeters of elevation difference. Really high-res data. And most times we only acquire LiDAR data if some local agency is willing to participate. In this case, the Fed says, we'll take it on, we'll map the rest of the state that did not have LiDAR data. So everywhere on that map that you see blue, including the Uinta Mountains up there, and then all of Grand County there had never been acquired with LiDAR data. And so last year they went out and acquired that data. We should see that data coming in. So that will impact a big part of the Uinta Basin on the north side of the basin up there of all that data we got in the Uinta Basin. So that's one for LiDAR. I'm going to skip that slide and come to this one. Another big project that they're going to fund is to look for rare earth elements, vanadium and fluorine, in a large area where we have something they call the Phosphoria Formation, often referred to as the Western Phosphate Field. That's a cooperative project with Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. And you'll see a big part of the Uinta Basin is focused in there. That's a project that is just kicking off. I mean, like this year, we're just getting started on it. So that's a project that will take a hard look at what's in our Phosphoria Formation across the basin area out here. I threw this in, doesn't have anything to do with Uinta Basin, but I just like to brag a little bit. This LiDAR technology has been adapted so that you can shoot into water and try to map lake beds. And so we approached the legislature. We actually got about $75,000 to do a pilot study, and that's that green area down there off Antelope Island, which we just completed a couple weeks ago, the acquisition of that data. And I'll show you a couple pictures of what that looks like. But we got funding to do all of the Great Salt Lake, the mud flats, and everything up to the high water line, and then also Bear Lake. And we think this is going to be cool. But you take a device and you stick it in an airplane and you fly it. And this profile see across the bottom. Let's see, I'm going to use my cursor so both sides can see. This white line represents about 12 to 13 feet depth. And this is just a profile that we got a week ago. Well, this will turn into 3D data that looks a lot like this. And we can put colors on it and we can map the bed of the lake and give us really fine detail of where faults might be and where interesting geologic features might be. We'll also have a really good model of how much water is actually in, say, the Great Salt Lake. So when we talk about how much we're losing, we'll have a much better idea when we finish this project. I just thought that was a cool one to add. A project that was announced that we had applied for, we were notified a few weeks ago that we would get funding, and I'll show another slide on this, but the Department of Energy targeted state geological surveys to do mapping across the entire state of where you might store carbon, generally in the form of carbon dioxide. Where can we sequester it? And so that'll include, and I'm going to show you a specific project in the Uinta Basin here in a minute towards that end. But we got funding, and the DOE announced it actually just this Monday. But basically, we're going to get about close to $900,000 to look at the whole state. And that's a big project and something that we're really interested in doing. A project that's been underway for a little bit, They're still trying to finalize the dollar contract with the DOE, and that's supposed to be done like any day now. But we're looking out near the Bonanza plant as a project to how, because it's a big carbon sequestration. It's a big carbon source, right? And can we sequester it there? And so I've only got two, I could go give a whole talk just on this. And maybe after we get the contract signed, we'll come back to the next one and talk more about this project. But looking at 5 different layers where you might sequester carbon in an area around the Bonanza power plant in the southern part of the Uinta Basin. This is a big project. University of Utah is the lead on the project. We're doing the geology for the university on this project. We also had some funding last year to do 3D maps or subsurface maps of the Uinta Basin. Maybe some of you have done this. Maybe some of your companies you work for have already done this. But in terms of state and publicly available data, I think this is the first time that we've done the whole basin. So this report was actually issued last year. In September, I signed off on the final draft back then. I just thought I'd show you a couple of quick images out of that. So 5 layers that we looked at was the top of the Green River, the top of the Wasatch, top of the Mancos, top of the Dakota, and the top of the Cedar Mountain. And so across the basin here. And we used well logs to kind of define that, but every one of those little black dots represents a well that we used. So all the wells that the companies in the basin have done, we utilized in mapping and making these 3-dimensional maps. So here's the first map. I'm just going to kind of start at the top and work my way down. Top of the Green River, top of the Wasatch, top of the Mancos Shale. And let me back up for a minute. These are all positioned. They look, why is the picture bouncing? Because I've tried to position them so that you're seeing them in a geographic position. So in other words, if you look at latitude 40, that latitude 40 should line up at the same level on that figure. So if you drop down, there's 40. So that's top of the Wasatch, top of the Mancos, top of the Dakota, and top of the Cedar Mountain. So we've published this data, and this data is out there. You can come get it if you want. You can get it from our database. So it's available. Another map one of my guys just recently did was a map to the top of the mahogany oil zone across the whole oil shale zone across the whole basin. So these are the type of work that we can go do that maybe individual companies can't, and certainly willing to make it available to the folks. SITLA funded a project that we did out here in the northern part of the basin, focused on the Green River and the Wasatch formations, and covered a whole variety of topics. We've done a couple of papers on this and have presented the data. So that was a SITLA, if you don't know what SITLA is, School, Institutions, and Trust Lands Agency for the state. So they wanted to know what was on lands that they own in that area. So this is another report that we've put out. And that involved looking at a lot of well logs, looking at a lot of core, and making models and things out here. Is Riley still here? Your name's on this, I see. Thank you, folks. But it's a really involved project to go from logs to core to lithologic models across the basin to make models. I just threw this in as a random slide. Oh, it didn't run my video. Someone said, are you going to show your landslide video? Oh, it doesn't want to run on here either. Not sure why. What a landslide looks like, but it's just gravel that's flowing down the hill. Anyway, that was a random slide I threw in. Well, you know, it's funny. People think landslides are a big, giant mass of dirt that falls down the hill in a big, giant swoop. The thistle slide, which I got to climb up on in 1983, moved about 3 feet an hour. That's it. And it's the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history because it cost the railroad $1 million a day until they could get the railroad reopened and rerouted. So it doesn't take much to cause massive amounts of damage. I've been in front of the legislature twice on that this year, just in May and June. So another project we did going back was one of our guys, and I think Riley and the U.S. Geological Survey, so a bunch of agencies got together and did it to look at outcrop characterization
of the Uteland Butte member. Now, the main reason I included this topic that we worked on in the basin was because not only did we look at outcrop that you could drive to or hike to or take a drone to, but geologists, they will do almost anything to go get data, including raft along the Green River. And so these guys volunteered at all total hardship to go raft down the Green River. There's some pretty gnarly spots. And there's Mr. Vandenberg. I don't know who's the guy with the straw hat. But anyway, someone's working and someone's watching.
One of your groundwater guys.
It's one of my groundwater guys. Okay. No names mentioned. Okay, good. And you notice in this next picture, there's one guy working on a raft and everybody else is watching. So I don't know if Riley's in this picture or not, but I'm picking on him. But they say it was, there was some sunshine, but most of the time it was really wet. And it was windy, and at times they were getting blown upstream. But these geologists, they will go out and go anywhere to find data. And what they were amazed at, if I remember a big takeaway on this, was how consistent the Green River was formation as they went through this whole stretch. And that was a big stand on that. So somebody wrote this haiku. It's not mine, but 40-some degrees, soggy rain, extreme wind and hail, be more like Will and grin. And so Will always had a smile on his face. So I'm going to finish. This is my last slide. We good? Am I on time? You're fine. Good. I'm just trying to keep. I went pretty quick. Have to take questions. So I'm going to ask a question. A couple people I've already told you cannot answer this question, but what is lithium used for? Besides, did I say lithium? Oh, wrong word. Scratch that. No, indium. Indium is a critical mineral. Who has heard of indium before? Oh, only a few. Who knows what it's used for? Come on, I brought a very special collector edition of the Utah Geologic Map on a t-shirt to give away. Screens. Who said screens? Oh, you know the answer to this, Holly. Okay, nobody knows the answer to that. Thank you. Anybody know? Okay, Holly, tell us how it's used.
So it's a critical mineral that's used in like iPad screens, phone screens, and I said it's a critical mineral that's used in iPad screens, phone screens, and things like that. Without indium, you wouldn't have.
You would have your cell phone.
Yep.
So, yeah, indium, and it's a mineral that's in Utah, a critical mineral. If you didn't have it, it forms a thin, clear metal, and it conducts electricity. So when you touch your screen with your finger, it allows electricity to be conducted to whatever you're touching. So nobody knew the answer to that. Holly's my public information officer, as well as oil, gas, and minerals. So she knows it, oil, gas, and mine, and is really smart. So.
So by glass points, we're talking a component of Gorilla Glass, which is. So we're talking about a component called for Gorilla Glass, Stan?
It's a layer in between the glass and the electronics on the bottom of your screen. Yeah. So I guess I don't know how to give this away now. I was hoping somebody would know that answer. But everybody uses it. You know, Harry? I have a question. Oh, you have a question? I do not know the answer to that one. He asked if it was used in solar panels. It may be. But Utah is one of the very few places in the U.S. that produces indium. Or that it's available. Anyway, I don't know if we produce it, but it's available. And my last slide was, what questions can I answer? Nobody has a question. Okay. Well, I'm done, and I think that gets us done on time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank those that participated today, Yankton, Alan, Dan, and Bill, for their presentations. Also, I'd like to thank Duchesne County for the use of this facility, and they provided the food this morning. And our divisional technical staff, Paul and Matt. Without them, you saw them, something always goes wrong, and they're up here to fix it, so we appreciate that. Now, briefly, for our collaboration part, I just want to go over, do we have any county, state, federal agencies, operators, tribal components, or any citizens that have concerns that they want to bring before this meeting? Because that's really what this whole meeting is about. It's for us to get together as a oil and gas community to talk about things that we're concerned about or where we're headed. So at this time, open it up. Yeah. Hold on.
I'm just wondering where the rail system is at, because you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah. Anyone have that answer? Anyone? Rail system. Well, you know what? We're trying to get them to come next collaborative meeting, which reminds me that will be Wednesday, November 8th. Okay? That's a little change. Usually we have it in October, so we're going to have that November 8th. And
Isn't it still hung up with some litigation?
I've heard so many things. I don't know what. I know that the Colorado, some entities are there.
There was stuff, protest on Fish and Wildlife Service, biological opinion. I don't know if that ever got finalized.
I don't know. I mean, I apologize for that, but usually I look to this group for the answers on that. Yeah, Orland, Scott.
I talked to Seven County Coalition, one of our commissioners in Vernal, and he said that they're actually drilling test cores on the backside of Indian Canyon. So they're still saying they're pressing forward. He said that they're still trying to get it out to where that they can get going on it within the next year and a half or so.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Miles, was Irene? Is Irene still here?
They're gone.
They're gone. So anyway, we'll try to get them next November, see if we can get them to present and get us update there, because I know there's a lot of curiosity about that. And Bart, you wanted to say a few things. Any other things that we want to talk about? Okay, Bart, one.
I just wanted to remind everybody of the Uinta Basin Energy Summit coming up August 29th and 30th. Probably most of you already know about that at this point, but just a quick reminder as we close. And just maybe one more round of applause for our speakers. We took and promised them a lunch if they came and presented to us, and they went for it. We didn't tell them we were giving it to everybody, so maybe one more round of applause for them.
So with that, we'll close out our meeting. Appreciate your support here today. And lunch is provided, so do not leave without getting lunch, okay? Thank you.